Live from virtual Loudon, New Hampshire, we welcome race fans one and all to the RealSimRacing Sim Speed Shout Winter Series here on RaceSpotTV. It's the Magic Mile where we get set to kick off the second half of the 2021/22 Winter Series season for a 125-lap race around the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. My name is Nolan Remple with Justin Prince beside me in the broadcast booth and the one and only Hugo Louise down behind the cameras for tonight's race. So Justin, we get set to go racing in the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. It's a flat track. That doesn't mean it's not a fast track though. And with 125 laps, I think we're in for a great show tonight on what these drivers can give us in the second half of the season.
To say tonight could be magical is an understatement for the Magic Mile. This is not the easiest of short tracks to try and battle at, especially when it comes to setting up passes because of its flat nature. It's a track that takes a lot of rhythm to get used to, but it's also a track where if you push too hard on the brakes, you'll likely end up hitting someone from behind. This is not going to be the easiest race tonight, Nolan, but for some drivers, the pressure is absolutely on to try and prove they have a shot at the title, especially with Mr. Consistency, Andrew Freenosh, continuing that run with how he performed at Rockingham.
He was, of course, the first driver to score a second victory in this Winter Series season, the first repeat winner on the season, and thus he leads the points. 35 points up from one. Michael Araya down in second place. Liam Sheen still rounds out third place. So Freenosh at this point looking set to stretch his legs comfortably in the points lead. He can afford to, at this point, have a bad race, but with Talladega just 2 weeks away, I would still say that he is not going to be all too comfortable sitting there with just a 35-point gap, because you and I, Justin, both know how Talladega can play out. At this point at New Hampshire, if I was him, I'd be wanting to put as much points as possible to myself and Laraya, getting set for the biggest and baddest track of the NASCAR calendar.
And that being Talladega, absolutely, especially keep in mind with Lucas Oil Raceway and Las Vegas coming up as well in the next few weeks. This is kind of, for some drivers, the most important race potentially outside of Dega to survive at, because this track is not going to necessarily be easy. Track position is going to be so critical. Compare that to Talladega, where legit anything can happen. The Magic Mile's seen plenty of exciting moments and has some dramatic history in its real-world racing action, as well as some of its sim racing action. Now it's the matter of seeing which drivers end up taking the checkered flag and getting the chance to carry a virtual lobster in victory lane and hope not to get bitten.
With how difficult it can be to get the power down to the track like this, where it is so flat and it's so easy to spin up the rear tires, the fact that the track temperature is as high as it is at 119 degrees Fahrenheit, it means we are in a bit of a recipe for what could be a very slippery race out there tonight. A lot of these drivers you can already see in qualifying utilizing a bit of a wider arcing line. They enter a little bit lower in turn one, then bank it out wide and dive it back down low on the exit of turn two to get the best possible run down these straightaways. And you mentioned, of course, tire lockup's going to be a really huge factor, especially for drivers that are trying to follow with what little draft you can get down these long straightaways. You have to wonder how long it'll take before we start seeing drivers starting to use the bumper, as this is really one of the only tracks that is over half a mile where the bump and run is a feasible option to go for a position.
I wouldn't necessarily say, though, the draft will be a big factor tonight, Nolan, but I will say the potential of braking marks will be huge. The potential of how drivers push on the gas in particular goes in. If you're too quick on the throttle, as some drivers have discussed with me, even by a couple percent too quick, it can fry your right front tire like an egg. And this is the type of racetrack that can potentially be that type of a night where you fry your eagles like eggs and turn them into scrambled eggs or sunny side up eggs. In all seriousness though, there's also the thought process of, do you dare try and use third gear? Because that's been a talking point in the past when it comes to New Hampshire and some of its history in terms of races. There's so much to think about as a driver though, but it's pretty simple strategy wise. I will say though, one stopper on the fuel expected potentially for tonight in normal circumstances, especially with the full tank.
Of course, I think the bigger question at that point is, how long do we see these quote-unquote regular circumstances play on out? Now, of course, last week at Rockingham, we were kind of preparing for a few more cautions than you would normally see, given how difficult the track Rockingham is, and they ended up having a solid, clean run. Green flag almost up to the halfway point in last week's race with the Sim Speed Shop 150. You have to wonder how long it'll take for that yellow flag, or if we'll even see the yellow flag here tonight from New Hampshire. Of course, these drivers have shown before that they are phenomenal being able to keep it out of trouble right where it counts. And so far throughout the course of qualifying, we've been seeing not too many drivers having too many struggles so far. Obviously, drivers push the fold in practice. How long do you think it might be before we end up seeing drivers, shall we say, facing the wrong way here at New Hampshire?
Well, there is the chance of that coming right from the jump, but usually you see trouble afoot around lap 15, lap 20 or so. Keep in mind, some of the drivers we've seen towards the middle of the pack last time out a couple weeks ago took them a little bit of time to be able to make their way towards the front. One driver not going to have to worry about that is Kevin King. Good qualifying at 30.710, in fact, 3/100,000ths off his teammate.
So it looks as though it's going to be a solid run for both Liam Sheen and Kevin King with just 3,000 seconds separating them. Let's take a look at some of the team points here real quick before we swing on over to your Sim Speed Shop starting grid. Of course, keeping it real with having a solid run for themselves in this 21/22 Winter Series season. Now 50 points clear of Flat Out Motorsports down at 470 points. I have to say, Justin, it's looking like keeping it real. They are going to be the ones to watch for throughout the course of this season. They have shown before that they are able to really put it together when it comes to these bigger team efforts. So I have a feeling that in this next race, particularly at Talladega, they're going to have themselves a solid run and potentially lock out that team's championship early.
Well, it helps too when you have a lot of drivers as part of your unit, like Brian Chambliss, Brendan Six, William Schmidt making some starts this season, Brandon Bowie, former driver in NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series competition, Nick Silver and company. It's a very talented roster in terms of the grouping, and in turn, when you have those types of numbers, Nolan, you're expected to put up strong points like they have this season. As a combined unit, they've had the most races counted towards their point total, giving that 50-point advantage. But Flat Out Motorsports has been doing well as well, keep in mind, Nolan, but also the team, despite having 2 cars and about half the starts, they're slowly, quickly picking up points now with Kevin King in the roster for now.
And of course, with the team having themselves a 1-2 start and a front row lockout here from New Hampshire, they're getting set to push the way even closer, potentially into the top 3 in the Teams Championship by the end of the season. Let's take a rundown of your Sim Speed Shop starting grid from New Hampshire. It is the team front row lockout for Liam Sheen and Kevin King, 0.03 of a second separating your top 2. It's another 200ths back to Brandon Six from keeping it real and the current Teams Championship points leaders. Last week's winner and only repeat winner so far on the season, Andrew Freenotch, is going to be in 4th place with Anthony DeVaro in 5th, Justin, and Michael Johnson in 6th.
7th spot tonight goes to Shane Ewing in the number 32 machine, with Michael O'Raya needing some valuable points and now in 8th position. Couple 1,000s back is Bradley Burke in 9th position. Sam Nieto rounds out the top 10. Ross Cato looked pretty quick in practice. He was about a 10th off his best time in the session, and 11th was his qualifying run, with Cody Harris in 12th.
Joseph Tice is going to be in 23rd, starting off the second half of this grid with Dave Matson at 14th. Jerry Weinmaster is 15th with Jeremy Miller 16th. It's Joshua Ball and Sean Casto on row number 9.
Row 10 features Chris Rabel starting alongside Braden Whitaker in the 04 machine, while Nick Silver will have to start from the very back of the field in the MRN Racing Network machine. That machine starts 21st alongside Ateshi Major. The last drivers did not set qualifying times. Connor Horn, Brian Chambliss, William Schmidt, the last of the drivers in the field tonight, Nolan.
And as the pace car gets set to roll in this field of 25 cars strong, files their way down the back straightaway for the final time. We're going to go green flag racing here tonight, Justin. Who do you think are some of the drivers we might want to keep an eye on to potentially score a win tonight?
Especially when you have 4 tire sets available and 3 overtimes, you have to give credit to Kevin King. Expect him to be very fast. Liam Sheen, though, showed in practice, showed in qualifying. He's been getting better and better ever since he started working with Kevin King. There's a chance he tries to hold on for a decent amount of time off this jump.
And we're thankful that you're joining with us on the Monday night, as from New Hampshire Motor Speedway, we say, let's go racing. Liam Sheen with a solid jump up from Kevin King, and here comes Brandon Six, already looking to challenge the team top 2 down to the turn number 1 for the first time tonight.
Phenomenal launch indeed for Sheen, but rest of the drivers started fight side by side as expected off these starts at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Keep an eye on Navarro as several drivers missed the corner up the track Ewing, putting Lariah in the fence.
So several drivers having some major incidents, including your current points peak 2 runner, who now has got some damage on his number 44 Chevrolet up in front. Liam Sheen led that opening lap, and you can see Lariah with that damage on the right rear, and caution comes out as Dave Matson is sent tumbling down the field. Did not take long before he had that yellow flag come out for the first time tonight. It looked like it might have been a multi-car pile of Justin over turns 1 and 2, and you had mentioned about some drivers missing their braking points. I think that might have been what brings out yellow flag number 1.
Yeah, take a look at this replay because the first incident doesn't have too much to do with this. Dave Matson, if anything, goes very early on the braking marks. Then the trouble starts to set afoot once they enter turn 1 directly. You see near contact from behind, but then his fellow sponsor mate in the 6 car just dives it on in 3 car lanes back, Josh Ball into his door, and spins him around. A couple cars get hit as well. You just need to be smarter than that if you're a driver coming from that far back and entering the corner, because he wasn't going to make that apex even if Ball had no car to bounce off.
It didn't help either that Dave Matson was kind of coming down a couple of lanes, but I can't blame Matson for that. He had no idea that Ball was going to be so far up his inside under that corner. You mentioned it perfectly, 3 car lengths back, and I think missing the braking point a little bit, and Matson not able to account for that, had no idea that that was going to happen, and he will be sent around for caution flag number 1. You see a few drivers coming on down pit road. Unsurprising, these are drivers that were collected in that latest incident. You look at the likes of Lariah, as well as Josh Ball into the pit lane. Chris Rabel down in as well. Didn't think he had anything to do with this one. He might just be topping up some fuel for his number 29 Ford Mustang. Also in, unsurprisingly, Dave Matson with Minozzi Major in just behind him. He was collected in the turn 4 incident where several drivers, Justin, was missing the apex at 3 and 4.
And as well, when it comes to Major, by the way, he actually did pick up some contact to the right side wall, hence why he has the lengthy repairs being done. Here in New Hampshire, there is a decent amount of time to get repairs done, about a minute or so max. You can get in the pits more realistically 50 seconds. But this is also a track position circuit. You lose track position early, Nolan, it's very difficult to gain it without the help of a bit of strategy. In several cases, you may get stuck in traffic, especially with the effects of dirty air and some of the braking marks. It could be challenging to make it through the pack as we get 1 to go.
You really kind of have to rely on drivers making mistakes as time goes along, and as the further we get into these runs and the more the tire wear starts to kick in, the more possible that's going to be. And I think one thing we're going to have to watch out for, especially late in the tire runs, is drivers getting a little bit more desperate, trying to throw a move up the inside and maybe even pushing too deep, opening up the possibility for a potential over-under, as we're now 1 to green with Sheen still in the lead with Kevin King in second place. 6, you saw he tried to have a run up for second place throughout that first run, but was not quite able to work that inside line to his advantage.
Yeah, just couldn't get fully clear of Kevin King, and that's the thing. You can use the outside a little bit as a defensive measure, but you still want to be towards that middle to bottom line early going. It could be interesting how the lane progression plays out from here as the green flag waves.
And this time, it's a very early launch from Liam Sheen, already cleared by about 3-4 car lengths from Kevin King. King not able to get clear from 6, though, and 6 up the inside, pushing up the track, though. Gotta keep a heads up in that Keeping It Real MRN Chevrolet, and gonna power up and get clear of Anthony DeBarro, trying to stick up the inside as we ride on board with Michael Johnson alongside Andrew Freenosh last week, and as well as season opener winner. That number 88 car also looking strong the inside line, trying to hang on to a top 5 position.
See those runs, though, coming off the corner. 6 doing a decent job defending and giving a lot of space here, knowing you usually want to be around that second or third seam or so around this racetrack. Around the very bottom, there's a little bit of a flatter portion of the racetrack, which makes it harder to turn and rotate off the corner. Hence why 6 is trying to take a wider bit of arc and give a little bit of space for DeBarro, as DeBarro, meanwhile, is trying to get off that same line for the apex to try and clear.
This is not good, though, for Navarro in that Toyota Supra. He's got to get clear of 6, and he's got to do it quick. Being on the inside line like that is only going to hurt him in the long run. He starts to burn up his tires. Same story with Andrew Freenosh just in behind. Now, Freenosh is a driver who very historically in the past has been great on saving tires and having his car be good in the long run. So being stuck on the bottom like this is not going to be helping him in the slightest. He's in a similar situation of Navarro, needing to get clear ASAP so we can find himself on an optimal racing line.
Yeah, and Navarro right there showing that too, starting to burn up a little bit of that rear tire, trying to push to get clear. That's not going to help him whatsoever at this point. At this point, you just need to find a hole. Get yourself into a rhythm. If you keep on fighting like this, it will just hurt you longer and longer towards the run. In about 5, 10, 15 laps or so from now, that's where you really start to feel the pain from fighting this hard. And in turn, drivers like Nieto can just be more patient.
And still side by side, 2 rows deep for both 3rd and 5th, as DeBarro going to work his way up with Brandon 6. Johnson is going to have a solid run as Freenosh, potential technical difficulties for the number 88 machine. Could see him with a bad run here. And we were just talking at the top of the broadcast, right, Justin, about how Freenosh is in a position where he cannot afford to be losing any points with such a wild track like Talladega coming on up in just 1 week. This could be devastating for the number 88 car if he doesn't get whatever's going on with him figured out.
This is more than devastating, Nolan. This is championship changing. We've seen it happen in the iRacing World of Outlaws NASCAR Sprint Car World Championship Series this season. Now, it looks like it's coming into play in RSR competition. Andrew Freenosh, mind you, who has finished inside the top 10 every single week, Nolan, at that 35-point advantage, is now out. That means Michael Rariah has a huge chance to try and get himself in the conversation along with Liam Sheen here if they're able to hold on to either track position or get to the front in the case of Lariah now.
At this point, the only thing that's helping Freenosh is the fact that Lariah was collecting in a big incident on just the opening lap of this race. So Lariah himself starting to play recovery drive. We'll have to see how he'll be able to make himself work up. As in the background, one driver got into the wall. That might have been Shane Ely.
Shane is not having a fun time in New Hampshire, let me tell you. Just went too hard off the corner and did what I talked about. Just burned up the right front tire, it appears, Nolan, to the point where it binds it up and just takes you straight up the racetrack. The second you start getting towards that binding feeling, Nolan, you're essentially a sitting goose. You just have to let the car roll so much that several will try and conga line past you in the midst of the pack. Ewing's now seeing those ramifications now to the point where he's lost 8 positions from his starting spot.
And now as you ride on board with Nick Silver down at the turn number 3, Ewing continuing to tumble down the timing boards. The 79 of William Schmidt tries to look up the inside and have a run out of turn number 4 in a heads-up drag race for what is now the battle for 15th place down into turn number 1. Nick Silver himself has been steadily trying to climb his way further up, started 21st. After setting the qualified time of a 31.132. Still so far off of the race lead, about 6.5 seconds back at the moment, but still +7 on the night. Nick Silver looking to see if he can hunt his way up into a top 10 position.
Don't look now, though, Nolan. Guess who's back on the racetrack and is the only driver laps down, 4 laps to be precise. Andrew Freenosh has just come back from his technical issue. The New York State-based driver is back running on the racetrack. Now it's the matter of, if you're the 88, you hope battles such as this one end in a bit of trouble because he'll need a fair bit of caution flags to get back in the conversation. Meanwhile, Cody Harris just starting to slide back a little bit to the point where he's getting slide jobbed.
Oh, and Cody Harris having a rough time there at the moment, trying to get back past that of Joseph Tyson in turn 3. You saw Cody Harris think about going for the bumper, potentially move Joseph Tyson up and into the top groove, but opted to back out in his number 28 Chevrolet. And it is worth noting that Tyson and Harris have been side by side for the better part of about 5 to 10 laps at this point since that restart. So they've been in a similar situation, particularly that of Joseph Tice when it came to burning up tires. And we even saw it in a couple of the head-on shots. They were even power sliding their way out of these corners. And in fact, Harris still power sliding his way out of turn 4, just a little bit down the front straightaway. So tires seem to already be kicking in for a few drivers, as really for the first time since this race started, we now find ourselves single file all the way throughout the field.
A majority of the field, mind you, Nolan, is already seen about 6 to 8 tenths of fall off. The only driver who really hasn't fallen into the 32-second bracket consistently so far is your race leader, Liam Sheen. He's just been playing it nice and calm and careful. He's had clean air in the front nose, hasn't been battled at all this race, and the 92 of Sheen is just showcasing if you qualify well and get track position, it's very difficult to try and have a challenger approach you. At this point, Sheen's got some good spacing, especially since DeBarro's currently in the midst of trying to run away from Six and company, while King tries to do the same thing. Right now, things are looking good for the 1-2 punch of the team so far.
You even see on the time boards, Liam Sheen 1.2 seconds clear of his own teammate and 2 seconds clear now of DeBarro, the first driver outside of his team. So it looks like the team is going to, well, no pun intended, be the team to beat today, as still looking on board with the back of Anthony DeBarro at Brandon 6 as the Keeping It Real 66 Chevy starting to close in the gap to Anthony DeBarro. DeBarro seems to be getting a better corner exit, but Brandon 6 taking a bit more of an aggressive entry to these corners. You can see him taking a bit of a tighter line through the entry. That in turn does compromise that 66 car's run out of these corners, but DeBarro's taking more of a wider arc, especially around the corner exit range.
That's a good point to bring up, because at this point, this is the type of racetrack where you do see a couple of those lines come in. Some like to go for more of a double diamond line, so to speak, a double apex, where they try and go towards that first seam for the entrance to turn 1, then drift up above second seam for the apex, slide back down to the bottom side to the first seam for the exit of turn 2. Turns 3 and 4, it's similar, but it's also dependent on what your rhythm feels like at the time. You see more consistent line in that end from car to car. It's the type of racetrack, Nolan, where you have to try and search for those lines, though. It's not easy to just choo-choo train around the circuit and make up track position. There's a reason for some competitors. It's very, very, very hard to make a clean pass around New Hampshire unless you pressurize a mistake. It's similar to that of Martinsville, Dover, and several other tracks where you have to set up a pass for about 10-15 laps.
You can see Brandon 6 has been getting really close to the back end of Anthony DeBarro as the 27 car has been starting to slide the front and the corner entry and almost getting into the back bumper that time by the number 27. Definitely, like you mentioned, trying to force DeBarro into a mistake here, trying to overpressure him. And at the moment, Anthony DeBarro is doing a great job being able to fend off that pressure from behind. Now Brandon 6 taking an extra wide line, maybe thinking about trying to set him up for a big punch down in the turn number 1. If he can get the run, not going to have it this time, but though crossing over onto lap 23, Michael Johnson almost had the door open to throw one up the inside as well, as Brandon 6 starts to push wider and wider, almost out of that concrete lane right from the bottom side up to the black stuff. And now that's going to give him a better run out of turn 2, looking for the inside, trying to dive to the inside of turn 3. DeBarro's trying to cover, and 6 is not able to throw it in deep enough to make the pass.
And that's what he needs to do right, Nolan. Set things up to the point where he can get a good run, coming off of turn 2 especially, to get to the inside for turns 3 and 4. The problem is, if you don't get to that inside, especially in the corner, like at some other tracks, it opens the door for the others. You've seen, for example, Johnson had that chance through towards turns 1 and 2. In our words, for Brandon 6, he has to now set this up again, Nolan, for another few laps. That's just the nature of the racetrack, and it's to the point where it seems he either wants to get that run to diamond to the inside for the entry, or try and go on the outside for the apex and force DeBarro to get off the gas.
And just in the back of this, you can also see Sam Nieto starting to poke his nose into the mix of things in his Flat Out Motorsports discount tire Ford Mustang, which brings up another interesting point, right? I believe, you got Brandon 6 being able to work with his team and Michael Johnson behind, with Johnson playing defense, 6 playing offense. But this isn't going to work for too long, because before long, Sam Nieta's going to get impatient, hanging around both those Keeping It Real drivers up in front of him. And he's going to start to try to hunt his way down as well. And that's the one thing 6 does not need at the moment. His drivers try to pressure him to take his own position away, especially while he's being held up by DeBarro. So at the moment, he could see the top two starting to slip away. Does he have it this time out of two? Has the nose in. Tabaro's going to cover him off, though, pinching him in down towards the apron of two.
We just talked about the bumper, right? Looks like that's starting to come in. They did tap a couple times, and now this has opened up the can of worms with Sam Nieto saying, you've had enough time to try and do this. It's time for my chance. The problem is they are not giving each other space and are trying to squeeze hard. Again, this is still for fourth position, mind you, Nolan, on lap 27.
Oh, Nieto's pushing too deep into one. Just gets into the door of Michael Johnson through 1 and 2. The 39 car still trying to play defense as Nieto's squeezing him up. And it's only going to take 1 inch of space not being given for this to result in a tremendous incident with Nieto. Johnson, potentially Bradley Burke as well, if the 95 isn't too careful, all tumbling down the field. And Sam Nieto finally gets clear of Michael Johnson. Now Brandon Six, because of that battle, has been given a little bit of breathing room, but it won't be too long for Nieto starting to pressure the back end of that number 66 Chevrolet.
Yeah, Nieto looks like he's quicker, but Johnson still is not making it easy with that corner exit in particular. It looks like Johnson may have burned up his stuff here, though, because Bradley Burke, he hasn't really done anything in this mix of the battle. It's to the point where he's trying that apron line that was working in 2021's NASCAR seasons. He's trying to get himself around as well to keep up with Nieto, feeling he's quicker.
Now this is a solid battle that we're seeing. Drivers utilizing every inch of the racetrack they can properly manage. And this time, Burke, all 4 wheels onto the apron. But what little banking you have on the track does not happen on the apron. And that causes Burke to compromise his exit. So still has the nose right into the quarter panel of Michael Johnson. He's got to properly send it, though. This time, though, too deep on the brakes. Kind of missed the apron that he was aiming for, but able to get a better exit, actually, as a result of that one, because he wasn't checked up so much by having to slide the front end. This time, it's going to be dead even with Michael Johnson down to the turn number 1. I think that 95 car with a good slide job here might just get clear, but the 39 still looking to fight back.
Something's got to give here, Nolan. Something's got to give with how hard this fight is going. Burke is still stuck on the inside. But for reference, remember drivers like Jake Nichols comes to mind, one of the Mode Motorsports machines, trying to diamond to as low as they can to the apron, try and get themselves clear for the apex. It worked for some once there was a lot of rubber buildup on the racetrack. Guess what? There's a significant amount of rubber buildup on the racetrack. And I think Burke's now realized this is not working to the point where he's not getting clear to make the pass, and now he's getting really impatient.
He thought about it. He had to lift a little bit to avoid turning Michael Johnson out of 2, but he was able to hang with it. He'll have to, I think, be patient and work on setting this one up all over again. And all of this has allowed Brandon Six to get alongside with Tabaro for the final podium position. And it is a hands-up drag race down the front straightaway. Six just has the nose ahead. But Tabaro, we have seen this before, has been so good at working that top line, backed off a bit more, thinking about maybe the over-under down the back straightaway. It's exactly what he's going to think about. And he has the run of Brandon Six. Does he look for the inside of turn 3? Opts against it. Anthony Tabaro thinking, I think, big picture here at the moment as he lets Brandon Six go.
Yeah, Brandon Six just looked much quicker for the past few laps or so. Got that outside line we talked about working again. Took that time for about 10 laps to get back in a rhythm. Now he has to try and break away because Sam Nieto's now got that same process to deal with for the next few laps. You don't want to end up getting stuck doing that again. By the way, the race leaders, guess who's caught up to Liam Sheen? And it's the guy who charged the pack, saving tires much of the way and was the quickest driver of the long run a few weeks back. It's Kevin King. King is now within 2/10 of Liam Sheen, up at the front, by the way.
So you can just see them at the bottom of the shot. You have to wonder how willing they're going to be to battle each other, given the fact that they are teammates. If Sheen is going to opt to potentially let him just go because they are teammates, or if they're going to decide to just battle this one out. Now, they do have about 2 seconds or so, give or take, that they can work with back to that second train, which is still looking to battle aggressively with each other. At the moment, though, you can see just how close Kevin King is getting to the back of Liam Sheen. It's not going to be too long before it starts to become apparent that Sheen is holding up Kevin King with how much that 31 was saving tires in the early runs when we went green back on lap number 6.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting what that discussion comes to be now for these respective drivers. Does Sheen say, I know you're faster, I'm not going to hold you up? Or does Sheen try and hold on here for the next while or so is the big thing. Remember, Sheen needs the points and battling with Freenach still in 24th position. That's likely going to be a discussion point or at least a factor, but here's the other factor. Guess who's also closing in since clearing by Navarro? Brandon 6 is gaining nearly 2/10 a lap now over the past few.
You mentioned that Liam Sheen definitely needs the points, and it is worth noting that you do get bonus points for most laps led. So all of this, I think, tells me that Kevin King might just hang on here and play defensive, let Liam Sheen lead the most laps of this race. Then they can start thinking about battling it out with each other properly. What's your take on that one?
Well, it is definitely a thought process where if you want to have fun, it depends on case to case, obviously. You do the battling, right? Because for some drivers, they just love to battle and race it out. But if you want to race for a championship, in a lot of cases, this will be a discussion some have. Do you think about the points or do you think about the position? For the drivers back here, they're thinking about the position more so than the points right now. For a lot of these drivers, they're not in the conversation for the title. For Liam Sheen, he's in the conversation for the title. So there's a lot of thought you have to put in and a lot of discussion you have to think about, knowing you still have a pit stop to try and make it on fuel, and there is still a long ways to go at a race such as this one here with the Magic Mile. In our words, there's a lot to consider when it comes to that point, especially since you have to think, if something happens to, say, this group or any of the groups on the racetrack, guess who's the lucky dog? Andrew Freenach.
And thinking 3 wide through 3 and 4 this time around in this midfield battle, Johnson will shut the door. Sambieta has broken clear of this battle for about 5th, 6th, and 7th at the moment. So you wonder how much Sambieta might be able to close up on Brandon 6 as time goes along in this race. For now, though, Anthony Navarro, as well as Bradley Burke, both looking to battle it out as hard as he possibly can. Burke with a huge slide out of turn number 2. Kind of lost a bit of momentum up to Michael Johnson, who has now gotten clear. And Anthony Navarro still, I imagine, feeling a bit frustrated in his Toyota Supra, thinking about the inside line. But the problem is that right there, Bradley Burke will chop down and just completely take any run he might have had away.
Yeah, they are just costing themselves oodles of time at this rate. They have now lost 3 seconds to Liam Sheen. It was about a second closer than that about 15 laps ago. That's how hard they're heavily battling. Keep in mind, though, as well, there's another car coming up in the backdrop. That's Andrew Freenach, who's trying to unlap himself currently. And if Andrew battles it out a bit more, this will cost them even more time as a respective group and wear their tires a bit out even more so. But as we see now, Navarro, his tires look like they have gone completely off the cliff. He's now in the 33-second bracket with some of the battling.
Navarro looking to slide further and further back as this leaves it a 2-horse race in the battle for the final spot inside the top 5 between Bradley Burke and Michael Johnson. You see Freenach just at the edge there as Burke throws one up the inside. Is that going to be too deep? Johnson winding up for an over-under here through 3 and 4. I think Bradley Burke might just have it, though. Michael Johnson sacrificed too much to trying to go for the undercut out of turn 4. And Roselli is not going to be able to challenge back into turn number 1 unless Burke slides a bit too wide, which he does, allowing Johnson to close up, but not close enough to get the nose up the inside.
A good pass, Nolan, but at the same time, a pass that will hurt you on the long run. Burke looks like he's heated up that right front tire massively with how hard and how fast he tried to charge that corner. That might hurt him for the next little bit or so until he can try and cool the tires down, get themselves calmed down a little bit. Otherwise, he's going to be in a situation where he loses a lot more time in turn.
And while this is going on, the battles are starting to pick up as well. Just at the cusp of the top 10, you've been able to see those fights going on just at the tail end of the shot. And here's one of those now. Michael O'Raya still on that recovery drive to try to just get some points, any points that he can get at this point to reel in that gap to Andrew Freenach, making up one more on Ross Cato. That spot for the 13th place on the racetrack. And he's got Nick Silver and Connor Horn in the battle for 11th just in front of him. And just in front of them is Cody Harris, who we talked about earlier, still starting to slide back after he lost the tire run early on, trying to fend off Jerry Wymester for the 9th position. So you've got 9th to about 14th, all under a blanket at the moment, and that battle's just going to get itself filed out for the time being, but you have to wonder for how long. Meanwhile, even further back, Chris Rabel, Jeremy Miller for 16th place, looking to trade hands into turn 3.
Some decent battling in the pack, I will say, and we're seeing in some of these circumstances, though, for some of the drivers, if you end up not being able to tire save, though, fall like this. You have these struggles, and then you just feed each other doors.
And it looks like Rabel might be giving this one back. Miller almost repaying the favor out of turn 2. You talk about a battle that's getting physical quick, and Chris Rabel was already apologizing for that one. Just went a bit too deep through turn 2, pushing Jeremy Miller wide, and then Rabel immediately bailed out of turn 2 to get that spot back. So Jeremy Miller, I think, shall we say, expressed a little bit of displeasure, or maybe just kind of thinking all in the moment, trying to just get that spot back as quick as possible.
I think partly that, partly maybe not expecting the spot to be given up in the corner, partly the internet gods impacting that a touch bit to intensify it. But I think for both drivers, they didn't pick up any damage from that secondary hit. For the first bit of contact, though, it was getting towards, for those drivers that looked like that, they were both getting towards the tight side, especially Rabel, where he looked like he was sliding up the racetrack and trying to crank it to keep it off that door that time. Just looking like a lot of the drivers are really burning up the right front tires at this mark, especially with the fuel window slowly but surely approaching to make it towards the end. Here's the look of the race leaders, though. They have gained back time. They've pulled away another 2/10. No.
It really is fascinating just seeing how these battles are just ebbing and flowing so far as this goes along. As you can see, Brandon 6 close into about 1.5 and a half, but it just grows back to 1.7 by the time they hit the back straightaway. And that is the difference in lines that these various drivers are taking throughout these corners. And you can see so far Kevin King, Liam Sheen taking pretty similar lines so far. 6 is taking a much tighter line on entry. And then that is, of course, compromising him on the exit a little bit, but it is worth noting that every corner he seemed to close in just a touch more. It was down to 1.4 one corner ago. So Sheen and King, I think, back it off just a little bit. They recognize they have some time to work with, and don't forget, they are also starting to catch up to a little bit of lap traffic. You would see Munatsi Major was just up the road. That's not going to be impacting them just yet, but they get much closer, and it certainly will be.
You know who it also impacts, though? Andrew Freenosh. If you're Freenosh, you need a caution flag and fast at this rate. He's equalized out behind 6th place for reference, but here's the problem. If Major loses the lap, he's not going to get the lucky dog, and Freenosh may have to take some waiver rounds, which puts him at a major risk if it ends up getting another long run like this. In other words, Andrew is doing the caution dance probably in his racing seat right now.
And at that point, you have to wonder if a caution does come out after Major's gone a lap down and Freenosh fails to get the lucky dog. I think the bigger question at that point is going to be, how aggressive you want to be on the strategy. Do you want to stay on and take that waiver round? Do you think it's... yeah, you have to, but at the same time, you pit again, you're going to go down that lap all over again and find yourself in an even worse situation.
Yeah, but you have to take the risk, right? Freenosh is 4 laps down regardless right now. A lucky dog or away puts him 3, which puts him in a bit of a better shot, at least, to be able to get some spots back and hope for some cautions to in turn get those laps in turn fully back. But if you don't take the wave around and you stay at 4 laps down, you might not get 4 caution flags to be able to get your wave rounds regardless, and lucky dogs regardless. So in other words, you have to take at least that bit of a gamble and hope that you get the quick caution and hope you get the caution turn before your window. Speaking of windows, Brian Chambliss has jumped through one of them for the pit lane.
And you'd also seen Freenosh almost getting that caution as he had to make contact with Bradley Burke as they went 3 wide out of turn number 2. So Chambliss in the pit road, opening up the pit window for all drivers in the field, I would imagine, while the battles continue to pick on up. for spots in and around the top 5. Look at Freenush now at the inside of Brandon 6. Now Freenush, if he was on the lead lap, I don't doubt it that he would be up there fighting for the race lead at this very moment. But now, having to kind of pick his way through lead lap traffic, which is always a bit of a risky thing, right? Because these lead lap cars don't technically have to move aside to let you through, especially when you're not 1, but 4 laps down. You wonder how that might impact some of these battles, particularly the one for 3rd that Sandietto finds himself in as Bradley Burke is trying to hang on.
Yeah, that's a thought process too. I think for some of the drivers, they know his situation. They know technically he's now on 10 lap fresher tires because those 10 laps, or rather those 4 laps, I should say, he was not on the racetrack, so he does have a little bit fresher rubber. They know his pace, and in turn, you build a lot of respect by winning races and being clean amongst your competitors. He has that respect from his fellow drivers to be able to get that backing needed. In turn, Nolan, he's in a decent spot here, Andrew is right now. With how many laps have been turned compared to the other drivers, he can go a little bit further on the fuel window, if anything. So I think if you're some of the drivers, you don't necessarily just let him by if it costs you a spot. But if you know it's not going to cost you a position, why fight it? Why burn up your tires and in turn hurt yourself for the positions you are fighting for on track?
It's all about the thinking game when it comes to green flag runs like this, especially right around the pit window. And you mentioned the fact that he is on a bit fresher tires and a bit of a longer fuel run. That would in turn help him out, not just stay out a little bit longer, but hope for that caution flag to come out as well. Of course, I would honestly say when it comes to New Hampshire, if the caution doesn't come within the first 10 laps, a very easy place to kind of find yourself at risk of a caution is right around the pit window. The track is so small that you're going to have people with fresher tires oftentimes coming out right around guys that are on older rubber. It is very, very easy to misjudge a braking point and get into the back of somebody that is on older tires as compared to yourself. Now, we talk about drivers trying to close in gaps. How about Bradley Burke down to 9/10 of a second now and under a second for really the first time since they broke away to the top 2. Liam Sheen still holding up Kevin King. Now, I think it's pretty obvious at this point, Justin, that they are working the team battle here. Kevin King wanted to get Liam Sheen the most laps led. He's going to have to play defensive, though, if he wants to keep that game up. Bradley Burke's closing in. He's going to be hungry to get a run at that race lead.
Yeah, that's going to intensify things absolutely, because at this point, Sheen and King, they're running about 2/10 slower than the drivers on behind, to the point where they're past 10 laps. Their average has been slower by a 10th or 2 compared to the rest of the top 4. In other words, if you're Sheen and King, whatever you've been saving tire-wise, you might need to start pushing and using a bit of that tire wear. Yes, you want to save a little bit to make sure you're good on your strategy windows, but at the same time, if you're passed on by, it's going to be difficult. For reference, by the way, the fresher tires, some of the drivers are turning, or Sheen specifically, 1.1 seconds to about 1.5 seconds quicker than drivers on the older tires at the moment. Shameless is that reference mark still.
Oh, you saw Kevin King having to actually check up there at a turn 2 to avoid running over Liam Sheen. It's almost getting to the point where it's dangerous for Kevin King to hang around at least right behind Liam Sheen at the moment, especially on the older rubber. I think for Liam Sheen, he's trying to stay out there as long as he possibly can so he can try to lead the most laps and then come down pit road. But for everybody else behind him, the problem is they're also going to want to try to stay out as long as they can and hope they force Sheen in early, because that's going to mean that they'll get a point for just leading the lap in general.
This is going to get very hectic now. How does King play this? Does he try and be the defender here, or does King start to push for his own sake? Remember, King already has a victory in this series, looking like he's going to give a little bit of space for Burke, and Sheen's actually going to pit.
So Sheen bails out first in this battle for the lead down to pit road, and right in front of him, Braden Whitaker, who will go a lap down as a result. Freenush by far not the lucky driver anymore. So now Kevin King is all by himself with no teammates out there to help him out. Does he come in around the same time as Sheen, or is he going to opt to stay out just that little bit longer? Sheen into his box. No dramas there. You look back to Bradley Burke now in that battle for the race lead, coming through 3 and 4. Will Liam Sheen, he put one lap down? So I think that fact right there, if he does go a lap down, could play in very heavily to how this race plays out. Sheen just out of pit road in front of them, and there you see your race leaders, I think might just be able to keep him going a lap down by the skin of his teeth, and only because he's on fresh tires.
It wasn't made easy with Whitaker very slow on the access road, but my goodness, Sheen with a great strategy call here, possibly Nolan, because if this undercut works out the way he's hoping here, he might get a massive lead over Kane and Company. This is genius, actually, because if Kane, Berg, and Company keep on fighting, they're going to lose each other oodles of time, and guess what? That's going to make it much more harder, even with the tire difference, for them to catch back up to Sheen after the pit stop window.
Well, not to mention, after that tire difference kicks in, even with that tire difference, by the time they catch back up, the tires are all going to be gone again. And we've seen just how hard it is to initiate a pass as Burke going for the lead around the outside line of Kevin King. This time by through 3 and 4, and King right on cue to bail out to pit road. That leaves Freenage behind Brandon Burke. Now, this is crucial for Freenage because he's trying to just get one lap back. So that's one less caution that he might need in the long run.
Absolutely. Here's a look at Liam Sheen for reference. Wide open track on the lead lap. Picture perfect on the strategy so far as a result of a lot of the battling and help from teammates. Let's put it that way with backing things up. Where does Sheen now cycle is the big question because King did lose a lot of time, obviously, as a result of staying out there. Sheen will actually pass him by a wide margin by several seconds as Burke just came in.
So Bradley Burke is into pit road, and Sheen starts to climb his way back into the top 10, and soon it will be back into the top 5, and then I think at this point, Justin, it's safe to say, back into the race lead, unless something drastic happens in his run to try to charge back through and pick up the lead. That is going to leave Sam Nieto as the current race leader as we look to Liam Sheen, who is still trying to close up time, sitting in 7th place now after passing Bradley Burke in pit road. Nieto and Michael Johnson both coming into pit road this time by, while Harris, I believe, is going to be staying out to get a point for leading the lap.
Stretching a little bit further, you can still go to around 70, 75 laps or so on the gas, so there's still a decent amount of time you can stretch it. Well, you have the number 42 machine here trying to chug along the racetrack, so a lot of people think about various things like Connor Horn in particular. Keep in mind, though, Harris, Silver, Miller are along machine still in the lead lap. Mostly everybody else who has completed their service has lost a lap as a result of their pit stop sequences.
And that could be very, very crucial. If a caution comes out right around now, it would mean that a lot of the drivers are in a very bad situation, or at least trying to catch up to the end of the pacing line, as it's a hornet's nest, really, of cars, mixing it in with guys that are on the lead laps compared to guys that are laps down. You'll look back to Joseph Tice, who's right in the thick of things at the moment. He's in a battle for 13th on track with Jerry Weinmaster, and Sam Nieto down in 10th place, just in behind them. Again, laps down in the field thus far, which really just goes to show just how tense this race is really turning out. Shane Ewing dropping back and down throughout the mix of this battle thus far. And out of that train, as you look back up to guys like Michael Araya still in that train as well, as 6 trying to duke it out with Bradley Burke at the moment for 7th place on the track, though with some cars still left to pit. Usually right about now, we would take a little bit of a sim speed shop midway race break. I want to hold off on that, though, at this point until all the pit stops cycle through, because there's still a whole lot more shuffling in this running order to be had.
Yeah, especially when you have squeezes like that one. Nieto again not giving too much space to Winemaster at this point. Keep in mind the 48, one of the drivers who went for a very massive undercut call. 6-lap difference on the tires. Seemed to be set for drivers like Connor Horn, who tried a similar strategy to get up towards Kevin King. He's already lost the 1 second to King for reference sake. Lariah had to do the same thing. He didn't really pick up any time at all on the racetrack. Anthony DeBarro, if anything, went backwards after the pit stop sequence. And one driver who still has yet to pit is at risk of losing a lap still regardless in Shane Ewing. In this situation, Harris and Silver are essentially the key holders for much of this pack in terms of how some of their strategies can play out.
There's only 3 drivers that have yet to pit, and that is, of course, your top 2. And as mentioned before, Shane Ewing, who is still dropping back positions at this point, 68 lappable tires. He pitted, of course, under that very first yellow flag, but he had picked up some damage from, I believe it was the turn 4 checkup, and he has not really been able to recover too much since then. You can still see drivers looking to battle it out big time as Nieto makes up the move on Brandon 6 into turn number 3, just getting clear. 6 cutting him a little bit of a break by backing off instead of running over the back bumper, as Silver and Harris going to make the switch now for the race lead.
Keep in mind, Silver had a very poor qualifying run. He's going to keep on going forward. This could be interesting for Silver because he's been quietly entering the conversation for the championship. He's top 5 of the points entering tonight, 62 behind Andrew Freenosh. So this, if it lands all gold for Silver, he's going to end up having 2 different types of coins to celebrate along the pit lane. By the way, the net lead difference, about 4.5 seconds between Sheen and King.
It's a huge difference considering you look at what it was before they came down and when the fact it was only about a couple of tenths of a second. I think that really shows just how powerful newer tires can be over older tires when you take a full run into effect. And now Nick Silver bails from the race lead. He is down to pit road, and he is the last driver we were waiting on to come on down pit road and into his box 4 tires and field with the number 4 car. Silver will have the freshest tires out of anybody so far in this field, which does mean he could find himself into to at least pick up a few spots in, I would imagine, maybe the top 10 or so if he could find his way back up to it.
It's a bit of a gamble, yes, to be able to go for the massive overcut, but you'll feel like Superman, or at least a superhero charging through the pack when it comes to the fresher rubber. So look back at some of the battles, though. Michael Johnson doing a bit of a better job this run in terms of the tire management, it seems, despite all the battling. He hasn't really had to fight as hard compared to before.
And you can see Joseph Tice also thinking about being a bit more conservative, stepping back in line now that it looks as though this race is going to be stretching out into the longer runs, as we've only had that 1 yellow flag so far. That happened all the way back just on lap number 2, and we have been green from that point up to now in this race. With that, let's take a quick Sim Speed Shop midway race break, and we'll look top to bottom at your field throughout Sim Speed Shop 125. Liam Sheen, currently your race leader by 3 seconds. That gap starting to come down to Kevin King in second. You see just at the top end of the shot, just in behind. Bradley Burke sitting 3rd place, about another 3 seconds back. He is currently trying to get around the 0-4, who is a lap down. Sam Nieto sits in 4th place. Connor Horn, most spots gained out of anybody so far today. What a charge for Horn, who has gone 23rd to 5th place on the grid. Brandon 6 is in 6th place, conveniently enough, in the number 66 car, with Michael Johnson in 7th place. Joseph Tice sitting in 8th with Weimester and Lariah Justin in the top 10.
Anthony DeBarro in the DeBarro Sliders machine is in 11th position after struggling with tire wear in the first run. Ross Cato quietly is in 12th. Chris Raybo, he just got past a while back from William Smith for 13th and 14th respectively. Then in 15th, it's Brian Chambliss, who has had an eventful night, getting damage early. John Casto with a very quiet run of the 52 machine is currently in 16th. Nick Silver, freshest tires in the fields, in 17th. Cody Harris also pit low in 18th. Jeremy Miller is 19th. Shane Ewing is holding on to the edge of the lead lap for now. He's trying to still keep himself on the racetrack without using a tire set, though. He'll now get lapped in 20th.
And that's going to leave Braden Whitaker so far, the lucky dog driver, down in 21st place after he was lapped just a few laps ago. Munatsi Major sits in 22nd. Freenosh, after his connection difficulties, is still sitting in 23rd place. Just 3 laps down as opposed to 4, so not the best situation, but better than it was in the first tire run. Josh Ball and Dave Matson, your 2 drivers that have retired from this race, 38 and 73 laps down respectively. That's a look top to bottom in your Sim Speed Shop midway race break. Sim Speed Shop manufactures sim racing hardware that utilizes the best components available, as well as mixing in real-world components to their products to give you the most realistic racing experience possible. Customize your hardware and rig today by visiting simspeedshop.com for more information. SimSpeed Shop is the proud title sponsor, the 2021 and 22 Real Sim Racing SimSpeed Shop Winter Series. I want to talk about the championship and how these implications of various events so far over this race have played out for us so far today, particularly in the top two, right, Justin? I mean, Freenosh with his connection difficulties, down 3 laps. He is in a devastating situation, especially with Talladega, a track where anything can happen comes up in 1 week. But how about Michael Araya starting to turn it all around? He had a major struggling point early in the race when he found himself getting into the turn 4 wall on the opening lap, fell all the way down about 16th place. He's been managing to recover all the way up to 9th, and I'd imagine still has the pace to make up just a couple of more spots before this race comes to a close.
He still has solid pace. Give him that credit, despite the damage and despite some of the rattled confidence potentially early on in this one. But for Laraya, he also rolled the strategy dice to try and use the undercut to gain back a lot of the time he had lost in the circuit. And here's the thing. He's holding up to the point where, despite that, he is still keeping up with the overall lap times of the race leaders. The majority, in fact, most of them, he is running equal, if not quicker than. So Laraya's got the pace, Nolan, despite a little bit older tires. Now it's the matter of, will the luck shine his direction? The next car up is still about 1.1 seconds or so up the road in Joseph Tice.
And he's got a lap car of Braden Whittaker between himself and Joseph Tice. What is working for his advantage is the fact that Tice himself is being held up by the battle for 6th place. You can see that with Brandon 6 and Connor Horn side by side through turns 1 and 2 this time by. Once again, Horn working the outside line, 6 trying to work the bottom, but so far not necessarily going Brandon 6's way so far. I almost find it's a little bit amusing here. You know, Brandon 6 in the 66 car fighting for 6th place. We've seen that a couple of times throughout the Winter Series season. It seems like he just has he just gravitates towards that final spot outside, or that first spot outside of the top 5.
When you have a last name 6, obviously, you have to finish 6 every time, right? You just, it doesn't match the name if you don't finish in 6th every time. Yes, you want to win as a driver, regardless, but sometimes life finds a way of getting you to finish in 6th. In all seriousness, though, Brandon's been having some good raw pace throughout the night as well. And while he's lost some time as a result of some of the strategy battles and whatnot on the circuit, he's still having a decent shot here at solid points, and that's the major thing, keeping himself going, especially since he's got a big hit to the back end of his race car from some of those battles currently that he's having to hamper with that's affecting his spoiler.
Looking to now pull away from 7th and 8th as Joseph Tice has caught Connor Horn. He can see Laraya starting to close in. He was done waiting underneath that 42 machine, and now Connor Horn trying to keep Joseph Tice at bay. Connor Horn, I believe, was one of the drivers that came in a little bit earlier under the Scream Flight run, so he has had a bit of a tire disadvantage as compared to a few of the drivers. Laraya's got 1 lap fresher tires. Tice has got 3 lap fresher tires, so not the most amount of an advantage in the world of drivers behind, but a slight advantage nonetheless.
Very slight, but not a major concern when it comes to the long picture of things. This has been one of the longest runs, I will say, Nolan, I've ever seen at New Hampshire Motor Speedway in the iRacing service. You rarely get green flag stops on a short track, let alone New Hampshire at times, it seems. But today, the drivers have just kept it fairly calm and cool and collected outside of some bump and runs and some door slams here and there. It's been clean, it's been strategy filled, and for some drivers, I think the main thought process is, will the strategies hold up, especially knowing some of the pace differences we're seeing from some of these competitors now starting to fall back to earth?
And we talked about gaps trying to ebb and flow as the course goes out. We talked about, of course, how Liam Shee was taking a bit of a gamble coming on down to pit road. And you mentioned about how smart it was because he got himself a solid 5-second lead over the rest of the field. That is not necessarily too big anymore, down to 1.7 between your race leaders as Connor Horn starting to go a little bit more defensive. Tice thinking about the inside of 3. Decides to back out and back in line, but showing the nose there. And I like what Tice is doing here. He's trying to just let Connor Horn know that he is there. And I think trying to pressure Horn into a mistake, maybe force him wide in one of his corners by just outbreaking himself. So that might mean Tice can make up one more position without having to burn any of his own tires up. He's got to save those for the fight with Laraya that's just on the horizon.
Exactly, especially since Raya, despite having older tires, to Tice in particular, he's been railing them on in, slowly but surely, to the point where he's been able to sail it on in fairly comfortably to his preferred line, while Horn and Tice have been just holding each other up, it seems, for some moments. Horn trying to back up his corners, Tice trying to get those launches off the corners to try and get the send, and in turn, they're having that wrestling match. By the way, Andrew Freenosh, he tried to stretch his run a lot a bit, Nolan. He lost another lap. Fall back to 4 down. He has just indicated he has to pit, and he's trying to pit in front of Kevin King's nose.
Gonna get in safe and sound, though. No struggles for Andrew Freenosh. Now, he might go 5 down here as a result of this one with how far back he was behind Liam Sheen, but with the, I think fresher tires and the rest of the field would be a bit of an understatement at this point for Andrew Freenosh. He might just be able to take that lap back and didn't put himself into a situation he was in before. So all of this will mean that this battle will be unaffected by lap traffic for the time being, at least. At this point, Lariah has caught Tice almost about as close to Tice as Tice is to Connor Horn. Now, if you're Michael Lariah and you know you're in such a critical championship battle, do you decide to just push as hard as you can and try to force your way through to get up to 6th place? Or do you want to maybe wait back a little bit and see how this plays out?
I think knowing the situation, if you're Lariah, do the math when it comes to the points. Was just triple checking this when it came to the rule book specifically for RSR competition for the winter series. The winner gets 40 points. 5-point differential between first and second. Then it's 1 point on down, right? 35 for second, 34 for third, and so forth. Do the quick math in your head. 9.9 position differential. Sheen not only takes the points lead with the math and that logic, Nolan, but ends up in turn passing Lariah to do so. If you're Lariah right now, knowing there's a 5-point differential, you need to be able to get to Michael Johnson at minimum to tie things up. If not, get higher, and it's not going to be easy for Lariah. That's the problem. If Lariah pushes too hard, he won't get any of those spots. If anything, he might lose spots. If he's too conservative, he might run out of time. That's going to become a balancing act, where for Lariah, he may need a bit of luck in his regard, but at the same time, Lariah has the speed to at least get some of those points back his direction to minimize any loss to Sheen.
And especially when you consider that Talladega is coming up next, if Michael Lariah could even be just 2 or 3 points down behind Liam Sheen, considering the points gap, I would say that alone would be reason enough to start to push hard to work your way past Connor Horn, past Joseph Tice, and try to make the lunge on Brandon 6 as well, because Lariah can see 6 up the road, but is being held by Tice, who outbreaks himself into 3 and 4, and Lariah will pick up a very easy 8th place as a result. Tice thinking about fighting back, tucks back in line as a result, not going to go for it down to the turn number 1. So that's going to move Lariah up 1 more, trying to close up to Connor Horn, who has a little bit of breathing room to work with thanks to Tice's mistake.
Doing the math a little bit more on top of things, why do you think it was so important to get the most laps led? Sheen's, of course, done that now. Just to triple check with the bonus points, it was about a 42-point differential between Sheen and Freenosh, to help correct myself. That's a tie if Sheen holds on to the race lead over King. King passes Sheen, Freenosh still holds on to a 5-point advantage, entering the final couple races of the season, and Dega, mind you, as that next race. There's so much to consider, Nolan, at this mark, where even 1 or 2 passes could be the difference between who leads the points and who's even as far back as 3rd, entering Dega.
And it's not like Talladega is the last race where you have to kind of be on your toes as well. I mean, you look at the race right after that in the penultimate round in this Winter Series season at the Lucas Oil Raceway. I mean, one of the only short tracks so far we have throughout the course of the season. Combine that with Iowa, it is the shortest track that we have on the season as well. And that track almost plays out like a mini New Hampshire, right? It's got about the same radius of corners when you take things into consideration. It's got about the same amount of banking as well. It's just more of a half-mile track than it is a 1-mile track. So you can imagine that contact is going to almost be an inevitability at the Lucas Oil Raceway as well. That race could also be a toss-up before the gambling capital of the world at Las Vegas Motor Speedway for the season finale on January 24th. So all of this, I think, combined means that Lariah's just got to go, go, go. He cannot afford to just wait around. He's got to take every spot that he can muster up at this point.
Exactly. He has to at this point. But you have to be smart in doing so in turn. So there's so much you have to try and balance act at this point. It's going to be very busy, to say the very least. And all of this is, mind you, with Freenach still in 23rd position. You get drivers starting to have problems left and right, and Freenach starts to build back up opportunities to get some laps and whatnot. It's a whole different type of race from that point on forward. There's so much you have to think about championship points-wise and margin-wise. That will be a major impact for the championship. It's reducing greatly regardless at this point. It's just a matter of how those differentials coming to be, who gets what points and whatnot throughout the rest of the night. By the way, that race lead is down to a second as we take a look at Nick Silver and his fresh tires moving up towards 11.
So we'll keep tabs on that gap to the leaders and see if that's going to heat up at all throughout the course of this race. Silver on the fresher rubber up the inside of Jaron Wymaster. This is for the first spot outside of the top 10. Down for 11th place, Wymaster looking to pinch Silver in right in the center of 1 and 2. Silver pushes out though, almost returns the favor by forcing Wymaster up towards the outside wall. But Silver is through in his keeping it real number 4 Toyota Supra. And now Jaron Wymaster in his extreme performance machine is going to have to try to charge with him and try to see if he can maybe get that spot back. But with how good Nick Silver's been so far overall pace-wise, I have a feeling that Nick Silver's going to take this position and run with it, considering Wymaster was 4/10 slower that last lap alone.
Well, when you have the freshest tires on the racetrack by a difference of 13 laps, of course you're going to blow by drivers. It's very difficult to be slower than a driver on much older rubber. So for Silver, that top 10 is absolutely in the cards. It's just a matter of will we have enough time in terms of laps to get to Anthony Cavarro, who's running 32.5s in that grouping with Horn, Ryan, Joseph Tyson Company. That's going to be the interesting mark when it comes to Silver, who looks for an consistent run tonight. Keep in mind as well, though, the race leaders, for reference, they're starting to get very hectic because Sheen, his lead is down to under a second. King, he's dealing with Shane Ewing. You also have Burt closing in, Nieto closing in. Everyone is closing in, and remember how much the fall-off was for the team drivers towards the very end of the last run, which triggered the early stop for Sheen. Sheen's going to have to start proving right now he can handle this type of pressure, because this is going to be a true test as well for Road to Pro competition in the eyes of King, I think.
And that gap down to about 8 to 9 tenths of a second, dipped down into the 7/10 range for just a brief moment as well. And with 24 laps still to go, that is more than enough time for guys like Kevin King, Bradley Bergen, I would dare say even Sam Nieto and Michael Johnson to try to close in that gap and do battle for the race here, a lead here with Liam Sheen. Now Sheen, he is a race-winning driver in RSR. We have seen this before, that Liam Sheen is able to put it together to get a few race wins. I don't think as many as Liam Sheen might have wanted. Definitely far from the winningest driver when you look at the likes of Andrew Freenach, but he is capable of utilizing strategy and car pace underneath him to be able to go for race wins. Part of me has to wonder, though, did he maybe stop just a touch too early? Yes, that early stop helped him in the short run. He got the 5-second gap, but he still has 22 laps to go, and that gap was almost about a half a second away back to his own teammate at 1.7 to the first driver outside of his team. I have to wonder if maybe he should have waited maybe another lap or two before coming on down.
The thought process, though, I think, Nolan, if he waited another lap or two, is he wouldn't have as big of a lead. King was longer, better on the mid-run in particular, and he doesn't have that insurance buffer for this part of the race, where Burke and Nieto had to burn up their equipment to get up to Sheen and King in turn. So it made sense at the time. It still makes decent sense when you think about it, Nolan. Now it's just going to be, does it stay green? How does it all cycle? Is there going to be enough rubber left and grip left for Sheen in particular, especially for corner apex, to be able to defend, as well as for Kevin King in turn, if Burke and Nieto get close enough for a challenge?
I think the other big question that's going to take place here is we know for a fact that Kevin King is going to be closing right up to the back bumper. We can see this taking place as we continue to ride on board with that number 31 Reese's machine. I think a bit of a bigger question that might be playing in the back of Sheen's head at the moment is, does Kevin King, his teammate, continue to be, well, acting like his teammate when it gets down to the last lap, because depending on what team you're on, some teams, they take the policy of, help your teammate get the win and, just kind of go for it. But other teams, they have policy of once that white flag drops, it becomes every man for themselves.
I'm not quite sure how it's going to play out for Sheen and King. Let's put it that way, especially when it comes to RSR competition. For these two, they've been looking like they've been having a lot of fun trying to dictate the entire pace of this entire race. It's up to them how they want to play this out. And that's going to be the major measuring mark of what we see them in turn do. But here's the thing. King is showing in turn he's got good speed for corner entry all the way to apex. He picked up half a tenth, I should say, the last corner alone. He's got the pace. Does King utilize it to pass by Sheen?
And all of this while Liam Sheen is starting to slowly close into lap traffic as well. He's got Brian Chambliss in 19th place just in front of him. And a little bit further up the road is the battle for 17th between Jim Miller and Sean Casto. I'm not sure if Sheen is going to be catching that battle for 17th, but he is certainly going to be catching up to Brian Chambliss. We know that much is going to be certain with how close Chambliss is at the moment. That is not going to help Liam Sheen to the slightest as well. And if Kevin King wants to go for that lead, I have a feeling that when they both catch Brian Chambliss, that'd be the perfect time to utilize lap traffic as a pick to fight your way past Sheen.
That's going to be a good point, but at the same time, if Burke and Nieto are there too, they might try and think about a way to do the same, right? So if you're Kevin King, I think partly you might want to be able to be that driver who dictates how this plays out. King's getting quicker and quicker each lap. He's picked up about a 10 plus the past couple of laps. Another 32.7 to the 32.9 for Sheen. Now Sheen has to try and look towards the mirror, know what King's going to try and do here, knowing his tendencies with 15 to go this time.
And don't look now, but Bradley Burke starting to close that gap. Under 1.2 seconds, trying to break it underneath that 1 second range. Kevin King has caught Liam Sheen, taking a wider entry, tighter exit, right up to the back bumper of his teammate. And King's done hanging around, looking for the lead and diving to the inside of Sheen. This time by, Sheen's trying to cover him off, with his teammate in, and Kevin King's gonna force the issue through turn number 2, pushes Sheen towards the outside wall, and Liam Sheen was mighty lucky not to be wiped out by his teammate there, as King's gonna dive into the inside of 3 and 4.
Making it clear they want to fight. They don't want to go towards that team order side of things. They want to try and race it out. Prove which one's better than the other one. 14 to go. Right now, King's doing a good job on trying to squeeze up Sheen up the racetrack. Sheen's starting to give a little bit more space now to King after that near contact last lap.
Now, what Liam Sheen is also going to do as a result of giving more room to the mid-corner, it allows him to pinch in harder on the exit of these corners, Justin, which in turn hampers Kevin King's run. So King's got to try to use as much speed as he can on corner entry to potentially try to push out on exit. Just not able to get clear that time by through 3 and 4. And Liam Sheen is going to hang tough with it around the outside, down the front straightaway. Bradley Burke under half a second now. Kevin King's clear, but starting to wash up. Liam Sheen going to top back in line, looking to go over-under. Has the run out of turn 2. Kevin King loose out of the corner, and Liam Sheen's going to power back to it. He'll throw it back up the inside of 3.
Good send from Sheen. Here comes Burke, though, to join the party. Nieto's also coming. Michael Johnson's also within range. And Kane is not giving Sheen any slack. He knows this top line is good if you squeeze like that.
Kevin King did the exact same thing that Sheen did to him 2 laps ago, and now Sheen's going to fall back to second place, and now Bradley Burke in the Get Wet Sports Chevrolet. He wants to have a say in how this battle for the lead could play out. Kevin King has gotten clear, and now it is Sheen's turn to try to play defensive against Bradley Burke. Sam Nieto closing in as well. The top 4, all about 3/4 of a second separated them. But now Kevin King is going to start to be held up here a little bit by Sean Casto and Brian Chambliss, who are in a battle of their own for 18th place.
And this is now exactly what I talked about, Nolan. You want to get the pass done before you reach all this traffic, because you don't want to end up getting lost opportunities, lose several laps because you're trying to navigate all these cars. And King is now showing he's quicker on the entries and more so the exits. The thing is, though, this traffic is also going to be critical. Where he clears them, how he passes them. He passes one car at the wrong spot, he loses 3/10 with 10 laps to go.
So 10 laps to go. Kevin King's gotten past one. Sheen's going to follow through on the inside line, but Sean Casto not giving as much room as I think Liam Sheen might have wanted him to. And that is going to hurt Sheen big time as Bradley Burke's able to utilize all the tractor corner exits. Sheen not able to do so. And Bradley Burke's backing this up a little bit here. Knows he'll be able to get a better run. Sending one up the entry of 3, trying to get alongside by corner exit. But Sheen is just able to hang on.
I think that was Burke trying to send the message to Casto. Let us go. He did not want to get held up side by side for another set of corners and lose some time to Sheen. And for Kevin King, he picked up about 2/10 from that exchange.
And all of this is great news for Kevin King, who is starting to extend that gap up to almost 7/10 of a second. Bradley Burke sending one in, trying to get to the back bumper of Liam Sheen. It's not going to be a long where Burke starts using that chrome horn to try to move Liam Sheen up and out of the way. 8 laps to go this time by, and Burke with another huge dive up the inside. Oh, now we saw a couple of drivers thinking about utilizing the apron on the entry of 1 and 3 towards the end of that second run. Do you think Bradley Burke's going to try to utilize the same here, trying to get around Sheen?
I think so. Here it goes.
Up the inside, Sheen's holding strong on the top side. Can Burke get clear? Not quite. Liam Sheen still there on the exit of the corner. Sheen scrapes the wall, and the other's going to be able to fight through as well. What is now a battle for 3rd place as Bradley Burke up the inside. Contact this time by. Going to nudge Liam Sheen up the track. And Burke still not willing to give it in. Just now you can see Kevin King trying to pass Brian Chambliss. Oh, more contact. Nieto gets muscled down the track and Sheen gets loose out of 2.
And I think Sheen's tires have fallen off the cliff. This is similar to what we've seen towards the end of the first run. The first long run, should say, of the race. Both cars for the team are struggling, more so Sheen, remember, before he went for that early pit call once he realized what was happening. The problem is the strategy just seems to have not fully worked out to the way he was hoping. Now with about 5 laps to go, if he wants a podium, he needs to defend for all he can.
The fact that he's having to get around Brian Chambliss is not helping matters either. Sam Nieto himself is under fire now from Michael Johnson, trying to look around the outside in the MRN 39 Camaro. And it was almost going to be 3 wide with lap traffic way up high. This time, Chambliss moving well and truly out of the way, not wanting to get involved in the battle for 3rd place. I think at this point, we're done having to worry about lap traffic, at least for the battles from 3rd on back to about the 5th place. Still have a second between King and Burke. We'll keep an eye on that battle as Michael Johnson sends one to the inside of Nieto. At this point, Nieto has to make that move on Liam Sheen fast, or he's going to be passed up by Johnson, and the opportunity for a podium will be out the window.
For Nieto would be one of his better runs this season. Keep in mind, Nieto, only 1 top 5 entering tonight's action. The thing is there enough tire left in Nieto's tanks? Let's go to your Eagles in turn to be able to get this done. It looks like he's trying to take a moment, regather himself up. He might have 1 or 2 shots max, Nolan, to get this done if he's able to get close enough.
And this is where it all comes into the point that you brought up right at the top of the broadcast about having to set your opponents up for these little overtakes. Michael Johnson pushing deep into 3, trying to dime it off that corner and get a run down the back, or down the front straightaway, excuse me. But Michael Johnson was not able to get as big of a run as I think he might have liked. And you see him too deep on the race that time, and actually slid the front end, caught off guard by Sam Nieto's braking point.
Now looking like they're just catching each other off guard indeed at this mark, and this may be towards the end of Nieto's time to make a move on Sheen unless he gets very daring, keep in mind, with how this is looking. 2 to go this time.
The popsicle sticks are in the air. Bradley Burke still under half a second up to Kevin King, but how this battle's playing out is not going to be close enough. Michael Johnson to the inside this time by on Sam Nieto, using all of the apron that he can manage through turn 1. Almost manages to get alongside Liam Sheen. Does get alongside Liam Sheen for all of a brief moment. Sam Nieto's going to be blocked in here. Oh, gets makes contact and bodies Michael Johnson down the track. 3 wide with lap traffic coming to the white flag.
Not surprised there. Michael Johnson tried to squeeze him in behind Whitaker. Johnson seems to have said, I want this 4th spot. I'm not going to give any breaks with the white flag waving here.
1 lap left to go and 1 more mile around the Magic Mile for the race lead. Down in just 3/10 of a second, about 3.5 of a second. Bradley Burke, at this point, is out of time. If he does not manage to make something, like make some kind of miracle happen in turn 3, he's gonna have everything going for him. He's sending it to the inside, sliding out. Oh, he takes him out! Kevin King is wiped out for the lead, and Bradley Burke will come out of turn number 4 in a controversial fashion. Will win at the Magic Mile.
Wow. Burke sent it. He wanted the win. He just pulled off the move from 5 car lengths back. That's not going to be popular, Nolan, but Burke was hungry for this one.
That, I think, has got to be one of the moves of the season right here. Watch this, sending it up the inside and sent him all the way into 3. Great save, by the way, for Kevin King to be able to hold with it. That was a good run, though, for Bradley Burke to try to make that move, but a controversial one, to say the least. Came from the apron, pushed halfway up the track, and even then, just barely nicked the bumper. If he was about another 100th of a second back, he was not going to make that move. He would have missed him.
Yeah, that was absolutely incredible. Usually you see drivers try it, but usually don't make contact or have absolutely huge contact. That time it was the mixture towards the middle ground. Incredible finish. Incredible ending to this one. Burke just 2 laps led to win this one.
You only need those 2 laps, and the most important lap to lead is the last one, and he got it done in the final corner. Let's take a look now at your official Sim Speed Shop post-race results. Bradley Burke wins the race after a very controversial last lap move. Kevin King in 2nd place, Liam Sheen in 3rd. To round out the podium drive, we'll talk to all of them in just a moment. Michael Johnson is in 4th place with Sam Vieto in 5th. Connor Horn is 6th with Brandon 6th, 7th. Anthony DeBarro is 8th. Michael Araya and Joseph Tice round out your top 10.
11th spot tonight, Nick Silver, Cody Harris, 12, Winemaster, Cato Schmidt, Raybo Miller, Chambliss, Casto, Whitaker, the top 20.
And that is going to leave Shane Dealing 2 laps down at 21st with Maxime Major finishing where he started in 22nd. Andrew Freenash, what could have been, started 4th place. Internet issues see him finish 4 laps down in 23rd place on the back foot coming into Talladega. Josh Paul and Dave Batts are the only 2 retirements of the race, down in 24th and 25th. Only 1 caution so far, though, tonight, and that was on lap number 2. The rest of the race ran completely green. We got to see those strategy battles finally play out, Justin, and what an amazing race it was as we wrap up your Sim Speed Shop post-race results.
There's going to be a lot to think about, let's put it that way, if you're in the hands of race control tonight, if you're one of the drivers involved tonight, if you're one of the competitors, how this played out. Absolutely crazy how this has just played out. One of the more dramatic finishes in the past couple years in RSR competition.
I have to say, that was about the biggest send I have seen in these cars, or on any oval race, for some time, and I'll give it to Burt. He made it work right when it counted, and we'll see if we can maybe get a word with him later on tonight. But for now, we have the bottom 2 drivers in the podium that we have yet to give a little bit of a chat to. And since we're still waiting for Bradley Burke to finish the celebrations, why don't we start from the bottom and we'll work our way up to the top. So we'll start things off with Liam Sheen, who was able to hang on for the final podium position in a desperate battle against Michael Johnson. Liam, you pitted very, very early, found you on the back foot late in the race, but you still hang on to a podium.
Yeah, when I saw Andrew throughput later in the race, or early in the race, I said, okay, this is it. This is whether or not I win the title this year. This is my shot. This will put me back in contention if, if we get, close. I'm not sure if I am, but this is the race that I needed to have things go, right for me, get a lot of luck. I talked about it on Twitter prior to the race that, hey, I need this race to go well. And it did. We got both the bonus points I can get. So I mean, I maxed out everything except the win, and you know, memory serves me right. I mean, I'm not too sure how that finish is gonna play out. That's not avoidable contact. I don't know what is, but you know, that's all I'm gonna say on it. But you know, third's good. Potentially second. I'm not sure. We'll see how the tech gods feel about that, but I'll take that.
So what was the thought process behind this strategy call? You came in about 5 laps sooner than everybody else in your grouping did. Was it the fact that you were being put under so much pressure later on in that tire run?
It was mainly because I had to. Well, I mean, this is like it was just so much pressure at once. Like I had to. If I won the race, that's 42 points in the bag. Like I needed to find a way to put me in the best spot to do that, and I didn't have the speed late in the run to do that. So, you know, I tried my auto club strat again, and you know, it worked better than it usually did. At you know, auto club, I finished 7th. I mean, I more than likely I'm not hanging on for 3rd if I long pit there, or if I, you know, pit with the leaders, because it just wasn't gonna work like that. I just didn't have that speed towards the end of the run. But I tried to take advantage of my short run pace. I just didn't have enough at the end. But that's just that's how it goes sometimes. We'll head to Talladega, and that is that.
And speaking of Talladega, 1 week from now, we go to what is arguably one of the fastest tracks on the NASCAR calendar, the Talladega Superspeedway, a track where anything can happen. The Daytona race certainly ended up being wild at the start of the season. What do you think you can expect from your team coming on over into a track where teamwork is everything?
I need to. I mean, the goal is pretty clear. I don't know what the points deficit is, but I know it's cut down a lot, and that, you know, while it sucks for Andrew, it makes me grin because this puts me back in it. I need to, as much as I hate to say it, I mean, I just need to beat Drew by a decent amount of spots. That's my only shot at this championship, and so it's just a matter of whether or not I can do that, and it's just a matter if I can. I'm at a loss for words, but I had to do that.
And well, Liam, thank you for taking the time to join us up here tonight. Congratulations on a 3rd place nonetheless. It was a hard-fought one, and one that I have to say you definitely deserved at the end of this night. Congratulations on that 3rd place. Best of luck next week in Alabama.
Thanks. I got to thank JD Laird, Kevin King, the race winner, and all those guys at the team, and we will move on to Dega.
That was 3rd place runner Liam Sheen bringing it home in his number 92 to get a solid 2nd place finish. And moving up through the podium drivers, we now come to the driver who ended up being on the back end of the move that Brandenburg made on that last lap. Justin Prince is standing by with a 2nd place finisher.
I'm going to keep it simple for the first question, Kevin. Your thoughts on the final lap, final corners move?
My thoughts were... I mean, I was just trying to finish the race, and I think he had some upset feelings from Chicagoland, the first race I was in, and he decided just to no-lift the corner and wipe me out. That was what he said. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, it doesn't really bother me that much because I know I drove a good race. I just wish people would have a little bit more maturity about themselves, because now I know this guy. I've never known who this person is before, right? And now I know him as an intentional wrecker. Like, that's just a hothead intentional wrecker. So that's what I know him as, which is unfortunate. I have nothing to go else off of. But other than that, the race was good. Me and Liam had a brawl. I hate that I had to pass him, but those guys behind us were coming. And yeah, I mean, it's part of racing, but at the same time, like, there's being side by side with someone on entry, and there's, you know, being literally half a second back on entry and not lifting until contact to hit someone. I think that's a little weak in my opinion. So he can be proud of that win, but that's a weak move.
I'm going to ask you this in terms of the race itself, though. How difficult was it saving rubber-wise? Because it seemed like, compared to some of the others, take no offense, King and Sheen in particular seemed to fall a little bit more towards the end of the runs compared to some of the others. What were your thoughts in terms of that tire fall-off management, especially with the factors of it going essentially green for all but a couple laps?
Yeah, those guys are digging at the end. I think for me, I was doing pretty good, and then I got really close to Liam, and I think that didn't help my situation. I was having to use way more tire on entry and in the center. And I think that eventually caught up to me because my tires were not good at all. I think had I been able to just run my normal pace without the dirty air aspect and trying to pass someone on a really difficult track, I think that would have been a little bit different. But they definitely had some pace that first run, and obviously they had the tire advantage the second run. But towards the middle of that, that run, I was just kind of chilling to see if I could even get to Liam because he was super far ahead. And then I slowly started chipping away, but I was holding them back. At that point, I figured out how to drive the thing a little bit better. So I was just, maintaining the gap and then trying to catch Liam at the same time. So it definitely was a race where you had to save the right front. And I learned after the first run kind of how to adjust my line on entry, center, and exit, just overall, I guess, and it really helped, I felt like. Because even though they caught up a little bit, I think because of traffic and whatnot, I still had enough pace to where he wouldn't have caught me and passed me normally. So it's definitely a difficult track to pass. It's a tight setup, so you had to be a little bit on your toes on how much you turn for sure.
Now, Liam talked about the importance for his side for the championship perspective for points because of the issues with Freenosh tonight. That opened up the door for himself and Rabai to gain a lot of points tonight. But on the team side, the team actually has been picking up strong points despite essentially having half the starts compared to everyone else in front, and even those team standings. Right now, as a group entering Talladega, what's that approach now like, knowing you've got a strong chance to potentially make yourself into the conversation to as high as second in the team title, but also knowing Dega has anything that can happen?
To be honest with you, I didn't even think about it. So I know Liam, you told me he was really close. I know Drew having his issues is unfortunate as far as the point stuff happens. You always want to beat people straight up. But yeah, that would be cool because this is the first time I had ever raced with Liam in a league setting, and first time I've raced against most of these people in this league. So if we were able to somehow get a team aspect out of it, that'd be pretty awesome because I know Liam's super quick, but of course you have, like you said, the super speedways were kind of one of those toss-ups. Never know what happens type of thing. But if we could somehow get a team points thing out of it, that'd be pretty awesome considering I missed a few races to start. I think they would show how good we've been running in the limited time we had.
Anyone you want to thank for the run tonight or give a shout out to?
Yeah, you guys for putting it on, dealing with people like that. Some people are saying I have a really easy temper. I would say in the past that would be not so much, but I just take it for what it is. All the drivers who did really well for the most part, giving us room. It's super hard to pass, so it's understandable not everyone wants to give up positions. But I had a blast. I'm still having fun regardless if that happens. I'm not the one who has to tell people how I want to race and show them how it worked and try to explain what it is, because I don't think many people would say, oh yeah, that's a really good move. I think they'd be like, oh, okay, cool, man, that's how you had to win a race. So at the end of the day, I knew how I ran, I knew how I race, I know how I race people. I hope people know that across the board, and I hope I'm not known for doing stuff like that to try to win races. So but I appreciate everyone giving me messages and whatnot, but you guys for doing your thing, and like I said, keeping having to deal with stuff like that.
Once again, Kevin King coming home in second tonight. Keep in mind, things are currently still in the midst of review, Nolan, after everything. It's definitely going to be an interesting next little bit or so in terms of how this fares out after a very emotional-filled ending to this one, Nolan.
Oh, absolutely. Emotional filled, I think, to say the very least. I mean, we heard Kevin King's thoughts on how all of that played out. And, well, now we get to hear from the other side of the story. The driver that came out on top, Bradley Burke, now joins us up here in the winner's circle. So, well, Bradley, I'll take a book at I'll take a page out of Justin's playbook and cut right to the chase here. What led to the move being made on that final lap in the final corner? Mr. Burke, do you have us? It would seem that we have some technical difficulties with one Bradley Burke for the time being, so it sounds like we won't be able to get a word from our race winner tonight. But I mean, Justin, you called it right. I mean, things still in the midst of review, and it is worth noting that, of course, it is going to be made to a post-race review, which will not be made official until, I'd imagine, later on this week. So we should be able to get word on the updates of that one by the time we hit next week's broadcast. But I think an emotional end to the race as well. Definitely one for the stewards that are going to be having a long night trying to sort that out. I mean, it's one of those situations where you have to make the move, but at the same time, I mean, if you've raced clean and the guys raced you clean the entire time throughout the race, is this something that would you necessarily want to be known for doing, right?
Exactly, and Kevin King mentioned it, and a great point in that you don't want to end up having that reputation because it can hurt you in the long run if you have to race against one another and in different circumstances, especially say if you're battling for a championship. There's so much to think about here, and still a lot that's up in the air. So for many of the drivers, there's still so much to consider here, I think. And for a lot of the competitors now, how are they going to race against Bradley Burke down the road? We'll have to wait and see now, because they'll have this in the memory bank knowing he did this in this circumstance. What will happen in X or Y or Z or whatever circumstance if this type of pressure comes up in a bigger stage?
And of course, you talk about how drivers want to be racing around with the likes of Bradley Burke. Well, we'll find out how that's all going to go over in the rest of the grid's minds when it comes to Talladega Superspeedway by seeing who's willing to work with Bradley Burke. And I think just how easy it'll be maybe for Bradley Burke to be able to hook up with other drivers potentially. So Talladega Superspeedway coming up in just 1 week's time. It's the biggest and baddest track on the NASCAR calendar, and a track where anything can happen in a race that we've already seen before can get very heated on even some of the cleaner races we've seen so far over the course of the night. But for now, from the Magic Mile, I've been Ola Rempel with Justin Prince beside me in the broadcast booth, and Hugo Louise once again doing a great job behind the cameras for tonight's presentation. Thank you for joining us for more Real Sim Racing Sim Speed Shop Winter Series action. We'll see you all next week in Alabama.